Welcome everyone to the Voice of Terminus show. I'm Yanida, joined by Josh. Say hello, Josh.
Hey guys.
Then we have Lex with us. Say hello, Lex.
Hi.
Vad was meant to be here today as well, but
he doesn't like us.
Sorry, Vad. He had a double schedule set up, so it kind of interfered with him being here today. And we have the wonderful Shy in the background. Say hello, Shy.
Hello.
So today we wanted to look at how to use the environments that we have, the different biome types, you know, the climate system, to kind of change up the whole way we approach the world itself and engage with the encounters, to kind of add more depth to the whole player experience, give alternate ways to move around the world and actually have things interfere with the outcome of like a spell, for instance,
not interfere, but alter it.
Alter the effect that it was intended to have. For instance, you know, like it's a dark area. So you would obviously, what you would do is you would normally turn on the light, so you light up a light source, but that could actually be the wrong answer. And also to look at how the perception system could also involve itself in the environment as well. So Lex, you want to go and start us off in one direction?
Okay. I guess I'll give probably the most easy to relate to example here of what we're trying to talk about. Speculation, it's a discussion, this isn't fact. So, suck it up. Think of this. You and your party are running through a real dark dungeon. We know that, for instance, Helmer's Cave is going to be very dark, gloomy, very atmospheric. Just say for some odd reason your group has a paladin leading the way. Well, a lot of us old EQers and D&Ders and other MMOers, we're pretty familiar with the concept of a paladin having a spell flash or flash of light or blinding light, whatever you want to call it. Just basically a flashlight, temporary blind your opponent. Pretty common thing for paladins. Imagine you use that inside of Helmer's Cave when it's really dark. Say no one has any torches. Don't you think that should have a little extra effect? Because let's think about this in real life terms. If you're outside, middle of the day, nice bright sunny day, someone shines a flashlight, you're no big deal. Okay. Someone does it to you at night, you're like, oh God, my eyes are melting. You know, it hurts, it sucks. There's no way around it. So why shouldn't a light-based ability being used in relatively total darkness, thereabouts, have some kind of alteration to the effect? It would make perfect sense to me.
Yeah, definitely. It could, like, you know, it could be the means that that light source actually attracts encounters because it's so dark in there. It's illuminating. So now it's not got the intended effect that you wanted. You wanted to kind of like light up the area you were in, but now that light is actually seen by encounters further down, you know, further down the corridor, or you know, there's a crossroads there. So now you're attracting encounters that you weren't usually expecting, you know, to engage with, because hey, all you're doing is illuminating the area. That's what you're thinking. So yeah, I could definitely see things like that come into play where the intended effect is kind of mixed up, and it would definitely be very refreshing to how we engage as well. You know, it could also be the case that you know, if we take the perception, for instance, in this case, you know, you're running through Helmer's Cave. All of a sudden, you hit a really dark spot, a really dark area. Now, perception could pop up. You know, something is oddly weird about this area. You know, informing you that something's wrong. So you're thinking, okay, perception's popped in here. You go about, you're moving forward, it's pitch black, you illuminate the area, and now all of a sudden you see a horde of mobs around you, and now they're attracted to you. You've now basically done the opposite of what you were meant to do. You did not think about the caution provided by the perception system. You know, you didn't take that step to slow down and think, well, what are we going to have to do here?
What am I actually doing here?
and this goes with, you know, not just illuminating the area. You could move these effects into the movement process as well.
Right.
You know,
but it will also be good that these mobs will also get blinded for a certain period of time due to the fact that they're not used to light. So it affects them as much as they are drawn to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to keep with that particular example of Hounder's Cave and a flash of light from, say, a paladin, not saying that any of these particular ideas would work well, because obviously if you use... In EverQuest, there was a blindness spell that was like that. I don't remember exactly what it's called. I think it was like blinding light or flash of light or something. But a low-level paladin used that to great effect to gather threat. If you have something similar... And Hounder's Cave if it turns out to be a lower level area and you go there, having a lot of things all of a sudden see you would be very detrimental to any grouping, you know? So obviously, at a game designer's discretion, that would probably be a bad thing to implement. Great idea, but bad thing to implement.
Well, it works both ways. I just want to interrupt you there, because it works both ways, because it could be a good thing as well. You could lay traps, for instance, for those mobs. You could, for instance, make them walk over a pit of acid or in front of you, or ice trap or something like that. And
you're absolutely correct. I mean, it's going to be different from game to game.
Yeah.
From what we've seen of Pantheon, I'm just going to assume that it would be a bad thing to go into Hounder's Cave, go and then 20 things come after me. But you could still take that idea and modify it to fit whatever the mechanics are of any particular game. Using Pantheon as an example, you could turn a single target flash of light in a dark area to an AE. You could make the duration last longer. You could increase the threat, because if it was, like 2 a.m. and pitch black outside, and someone's constantly flashing a light in my eyes, trust me, I'm going after him first.
Yeah,
exactly.
But it comes down to, when we discuss things, if a game designer graces us with their presence to watch this, it all comes down to pick and choose what works for you, or bounce off the idea and create something a little different. You know?
Definitely.
Just recent events have me to the point where I have to kind of explain things a little like primary school-ish for some folks.
Yeah, so it's like,
you know who you are.
You could even, have things like this also help you maneuver through a dark dungeon like Howney is. Like you could set up like maybe light sources that basically attract encounters to move towards that light source, while the group runs off and just goes around that corner to get away from that encounter, for instance. Stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. So you can have like misdirects happen. Touching back on what I said earlier on with the movement as well, having certain areas where you might have to crawl, use the crouch function and move along, because there's cracks in the wall and everything. And if you run past, you're obviously going to draw attention. Somebody's going to hear you running through that hall, or you might have ways where you have to walk, or you could even have situations where noise is a factor. So basically, you have to take small strides. So you could have encounters roaming that area that don't necessarily, see you, because you're kind of hidden through with the darkness. As long as you're not using any kind of light source, you're kind of hidden from them as well. They're more noise sensitive than they are, visual sensitive. So you would run into that room, and boom, the encounter attacks you because you're running in there. Now you might have to take small steps to get close to that encounter, or to move yourself into a strategic position where you can actually fend off that current encounter there while you don't attract the other one. So there's so many things that they could do with using the environment and having us alter how we experience the whole situation as well. It adds a new challenging dynamic to the core game itself.
It does, and I would caution anyone that is doing any form of game design that you really gotta pick and choose it, because I mean, there's a lot of cases where some of this stuff won't work. There's a lot of cases where they will. Look at for the life of me, I can't remember which Final Fantasy it is. If it was 11 or 12, the first online one.
Yeah, it was 11.
Okay, so you had Invis, and things could still find you because they could smell you or they could hear you.
Mm.
I know a lot of my personal friends didn't like it. I kind of enjoyed that system because it made things uncertain.
Yeah.
Whereas in a lot of games, you Invis, oh, it's not undead, I just run past it.
Well, that's another thing as well. Looking at the invis factor, for instance, this goes both ways. If we look at the invis of an encounter, for instance, there's other sight factors as well. There's infrared, or whatever you want to call those, all those different types of illuminations that you can cast as a wizard or conjurer, whatnot. Those should also play a factor as well, where if an encounter is Invis, then everybody has to see Invis to be able to see it. It shouldn't break as soon as the encounter's been targeted by those. Or let's take for instance Invis. Invis in its normal sense is Invis. Boom, it's done. You pull the encounter, you got see Invis cast on you, off you go. But this kind of relates to all the other senses, all the other visual aspects of the game. So like, let's take for instance, see in the dark, night vision. Let's say, for instance, you have to have night vision to engage an encounter. It's not, it's not just going to be enough to have see Invis. You might have to have for certain encounters, night vision or heat vision or cold vision or infrared vision. And
I mean, that would be great spells to actually have as well, where you have utility spells. That'll be a great utility spell where you have to cast night vision on your group in order to get through a certain area, because without it, half your party's going to die, because not everybody's going to have night vision.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, look at the past Pantheon streams. We've got, someone needs to fire the gardener and get a new one because Yarn swears the grass is continually growing. you add smaller creatures like your typical snake or a little, I don't know, a rat. Those could be potentially very difficult to see. If you had a spell like group heat vision, that takes care of that problem, but it's a very situational thing where, let's say, I think EverQuest 2 had heat vision and stuff like that.
Yeah, something similar. Yeah.
I'm sorry, they were for the most part absolutely useless.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever used heat vision or ultra vision or night or whatever vision
because
in EverQuest 2. Because
they didn't utilize the mechanic that they had there, which was a great idea. Because imagine having an encounter that is only seen in a certain vision point. So it's not going to, your Invis isn't going to help you. So you could walk, you could be in an area, move your group along, and all of a sudden you're getting hit by something. Now the wizard casts see Invis. But guess what? He doesn't see anything. You're getting hit again and again. So you got to really figure out, what vision is this? So you're gonna scramble going through the vision, which kind of makes it for a very interesting and fun, engaging experience, because you're getting beat down. You're trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
It would be enjoyable if it's very infrequent.
Yeah.
And it's something that there was some other way to deal with it. If AE, as long as AEs still count, if it hits you, you can still auto-target it. Like most games, something hits you, you automatically target it. It's, as long as there's stuff like that, I can see it being a worthwhile mechanic to at least explore, because it would add that sense of, I don't know what's going on. Oh God, save me.
AE should technically, affect anything that goes
when you reach moments where it's like you absolutely have to have ultra vision, for your group on your bar. We know our spells are going to be very limited, so that's got to be prime real estate. There should be maybe one ability for Pantheon's case. if they were to do that, to add whatever type of vision to it. You know, maybe it's not your stereotypical see and viz or ultra vision. It could just be some other fancy name for it that would let you see magical creatures that might not be in viz, but they might not be technically visible,
or sense magic, or sense,
or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
which is maybe a broad category, but it's a good thing, actually.
Yeah, in this case, when looking at Pantheon, I think a more broader approach would be beneficial. Well, but it is worth exploring for sure.
There's ways to go about that as well, though. Coming back to the perception system, you could have you could trigger a certain area where those kind of encounters roam around. So you could have like an invisible barrier, a radius put in there. So you're moving about with your group, and all of a sudden you hit that barrier, you hit that rift, and all of a sudden perception kicks in. There's something oddly strange. You've got a ranger with you in a group, or you've got a wizard with you in a group, or anything or it could be just a group perception. There's something oddly strange about this area. It could give you indications that you might need to tread softly, or
even
take caution.
You feel like you're being watched.
Yeah, or you feel exactly. You feel like you're being watched, for instance. So now it's like an indication. Oh, okay. So, wait, why are we being watched?
Right. All of a sudden, I'm starting to feel paranoid and covering up.
You look out in the distance. There's nothing there. There's nothing visible to you. You see a few bears. You see a wolf roaming around or whatever. You think nothing to it, but it kind of makes us. It kind of adds a strategy element to the whole MMO experience, where it's not just you run around, you beat down the encounters, you do this, you do that, you go into the dungeon. It adds you have to really think about when you're moving around the world. It adds to that factor of danger, and challenge and everything.
Right.
But
it's almost adding a layer of psychological element to the gameplay.
And to add to that, I mean, with the different type of environmental factors that they will bring into the game, those can really mess with spells and mess with sights and mess with the way mobs look and track you down, type of thing.
Yeah.
So cold weather, for instance, a cold weather type of environment, you might not. It might be all blizzardy and sleety. So you'll never see that Yeti sneaking up on you before he's right on top of you, type of thing.
Exactly, and that goes back to what Lexa said originally with the Paladin in Haunier's Cave. We take this now to the outside, a very dark zone, a dark area, a very dense woods that's just pitch black, and he illuminates, and you've got maybe it's foggy or misty outside due to the weather. Maybe it's pouring rain. It's not going to have the same effect that it's intended to. It's not going to illuminate as much. So now, it's kind of got a reverse effect on you. So it goes both ways. It adds that element of surprise, that element of, severe awkwardness, and you're thinking, what the hell's going on? So it definitely beats up the dynamic. And I want to quickly touch back on what you said about the grass, with me saying that the grass constantly grows. That's another thing that we've seen in a lot of single player games utilize that, where you have high grass patches and everything, where you technically can crouch down and you can't be seen,
right,
by an encounter that basically doesn't exceed the height of that. So why can't that actually be a feature in the world, the environment, where you can kind of sneak your way along, or you've got patrols wandering, you're running along, you're now crouching in the grass. They might hear something, they might hear us rushing at them, but now we can evade them by, crouching down in the grass and staying absolutely still. They might turn around and explore the area and see what's going on. We've seen that done in a lot of, single player games where you have that factor. And when we think about the behaviors and dispositions, that's kind of something that they could, touch on, have a look at, to see if that would be something viable for their cause, of how NPCs interact with the environment themselves, and with noise and all that kind of stuff, like hiding behind a rock, for instance. I would actually like to be able to hide behind a rock.
Right. I mean, the way I envision that pseudo stealth system for, we'll just use bushes as an example, would obviously be, it's not a form of stealth, it's not a form of invis. It's more like your character would hit a state of in hiding, which means the aggro radius would be reduced for you, not eliminated. Because let's face it, if I'm hiding in a bush and someone walks right by that bush, there's probably a good chance they're going to see me because, well, I'm not a rogue. I'm certainly visible. So,
and if I move, solid, that's for sure.
Right. When you're moving, like say you move in bursts. I kind of in my programmer brain envision the aggro radius of a character kind of pulsing with the movement. You move, it gets bigger. You stop, it gets smaller. And this would be very, very situational. You could use this system as a way of providing an alternative way to get around an obstacle, not necessarily for a prime mechanic. I guess that's the best way to describe it. But it would certainly give players options. It would make a little sense, and obviously a smaller character would be better hidden, so that should come into effect. An ogre hiding in a bush that comes up to the waist of a human is like an elephant hiding behind a freaking petunia. You know, it's like, gee, where is he?
But looking at that again, though, it's also a feature that could be utilized by rangers, assassins, classes that can actually go out for your group and explore the wilderness you want to go and endeavor in, and get like a feel of the land, and kind of get a course direction aspect on the whole situation. Talking about situational gear, this is also the situational encounters. How you're going to go about encountering the mobs that you see. Instead of just running straight forward to it and then off you go, bash, bash, bash.
Right.
There might be a better way to do this. There might be something we're not quite seeing. So I could kind of see a feature like that, where rangers have the means, or an assassin has the means to kind of use grass, high grass and rocks and stuff like that. But also the same with all the other classes you have. Like you said, an ogre. It would have to be a very tall pile of grass for an ogre to hide in there. But this also goes towards with situational gear. This comes into that aspect as well. Depending on what kind of gear you've got. If you've got bright pink, you're wearing a bright pink robe and you're trying to hide in some grass, well, guess what? That's not going to work. You're going to draw attention to yourself because all of a sudden there's something pink in there. So it's going to have the desired miss effect of what you were trying to do. You were trying to hide. You forgot to use some camouflage or change out your robe to kind of meld with the environment itself. It's like going into a snow environment.
There's actually a pretty simple way to add that to your itemization. Because obviously, if you're wearing dark clothing, you can hide in shaded areas a little easier. But if you were in a blizzard, maybe, or not blizzard, but a misty, foggy area, you'd stick out like a sore thumb. Yeah. What you could do is you could add. I mean, obviously, there's probably going to be tints on armors. We don't know about dyes, but based upon the color code of the tint, you could either add a plus or a minus. All your gear combined could either end up being really dark or really light, and that could affect the area that you're hiding in. So if you're in, say, the positive side of this make-believe spectrum, you would essentially be wearing very bright colors. Your silvers, your whites, etc. So hiding in a bush might not go so well. But if it's a foggy area, it would probably work okay. And on the other side of things, if you're wearing, everything goes into the other side and you're wearing really dark clothes, the opposite would be true. You could go into a foggy area and be like, "Hi guys," or you lay down in a bush and people walk right past you.
It's like, if you take all these environments into effect, you take the day and night cycle into effect, we know that these are things that are going to be there. There's going to be a day, there's going to be nighttime, there's going to be weather impacting you and everything. And that should actually have an impact on how you move around the world, how you engage the world, how you engage the encounters. You know, these should be utilized, and it would be really cool to see something along the lines in an MMO where they take the solo aspect games where you can actually crouch down behind a rock and quickly, you know, duck, take cover, sneak past windows, for instance, like stuff like that. When you go past buildings, for instance, you know, you're inside you've entered a big castle, for instance. Now you've come to a open area, and in front of you is a couple of rooms or whatever, and there's, you know, large windows there. Maybe you can crouch past them to get to the other side, or maybe you need to crouch past them to get to the other side. Another idea that you brought up prior to this, Josh, was having kind of grates or cracks where you have like encounters as well that are able to wander through these cracks or these grates, like, you know, the ghostly elements or slimes, for instance, ooze and stuff like that. You're like, let's take Helnius, for instance, as an example. You're in a dark room, you light it up. Above you are cracks in the ceiling, and above you's ooze as well. They might take attention to that illumination, and now you haven't got just the encounters in the room to deal with. You've now got the issue of the ooze squeezing through the cracks or squeezing through the gutters or whatever, and coming at you now from the top. Things like that. So it adds that situational challenge to it as well, because you intended to light up the room so you had a better bearing, but maybe there's a reason you shouldn't. You know, that room is dark. So that's where, you know, perception comes in again, where it could, you know, hint at you, you know, something peculiar about this area. You know, this
isn't a great area.
Yeah.
For some reason now, all I can picture is a perception coming out going, "You should be worried."
Yeah, you know, and so it's obviously it's very challenging to you know, bring in systems like this, but I'm sure it would be something that should be explored in the future as well.
Yeah,
if something like this can be done.
I mean, not to get into like crazy amount of specifics or get into a big debate about it, but a lot of us feel the MMO industry has been incredibly stale. Well, you could say that about a lot of different video game genres, but it always seems to me like the single player has a little bit of an edge mechanic-wise for a lot of different reasons. But we're at a point now where technology is not what it was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So we should start at least experimenting with trying to merge some of these systems that have been done in single-player games. And then some of them will be for, you know, bad, some will be for good. Sometimes you're going to have to find half of this mechanic, half of that mechanic, or whatever, you know. But someone's got to take that step and try something new. I mean, with MMOs concerned specifically, the dispositions, I think it's the first time I've heard anybody try that.
Yeah.
Which is to VR's credit.
Yeah.
Would they be a prime candidate to try some of these mechanics? I personally think they would. It might be a little too late now. But like you said, in the future, who knows? Maybe they can try it. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't.
No, you know, these are things, you know, like you mentioned earlier on at the very beginning. You know, these are just suggestions, speculations. You know, ideas we're spitballing here, and there's nothing to say that a system like this couldn't be implemented into, you know, the game itself at a later point. Maybe, you know, instead of having your typical rinse and repeat of the original game with an expansion come out, now they've added this effect into it, where something like this might play a major part. You know, this kind of spices the whole aspect of why we can look forward for an expansion. And there's a new mechanic in the game. It's not just a copy of this. It's not just the same old of the same old. You know,
it's not just 4 more dungeons, 2 more raids.
Exactly. It's a complete new mechanic. You know,
so a mechanic such as wind blowing through over a tower, and if you're trying to sneak around mobs, you could get blown off that tower, type of thing.
Right.
It's like, you know, go on next.
It doesn't have to be anything really like super major, like revolutionizing.
Yeah.
It just has to be a little bit extra flavor. You know, dash a little salt on your dish here from time to time and spice it up a little, add some rosemary or whatever, and just don't be afraid to try something. Even if it doesn't work, there's still going to be some people that will absolutely enjoy it.
And get the situational environmental noises going, you know, that make you jump a little bit from the side.
Actually, I'm going to veto that and say please no, because I will lose my mind. Not in a good way. I am a super paranoid person to begin with. I mean, I start hearing scrapes on the wall and chittering while I'm in a dungeon. I'm just going to take my headset off, be like, no sound or no me.
It's definitely one of those things where I'm kind of like on the edge as well. Like, you know, if I start hearing scratching or hear a weird howling. I mean, remember that one stream we did? And I was sitting here and I was thinking, what's that weird noise?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
What's that? You know, I was losing my mind, you know, and it just freaked the hell out of me. But, you know, it will still be a cool feature. If there is a way to kind of bring that as an optional feature in to intensify the player experience without, you know,
environmental sounds, you can have a click on.
I think that would just come into audio design for areas.
Yeah. You know,
not necessarily a whole new feature, because it's like Halner's Cave. It's underground, you know, hearing some water drips or hearing something scurrying around. That kind of makes you feel like it's a lived-in cave. But a sound like that wouldn't really make sense in, say, Black Rose Keep.
Yeah. You know, and what I want to talk about quickly as well is, you know, utilizing the environment and using, you know, having encounters as well, where it's lit up. You're in this room, it's lit up. This mob is doing major damage on your group, and you're trying to figure out the strategy behind it. This is where you can utilize the environment as well. Maybe around this room are fire poles with candles burning. Maybe you have to, you know, turn off these candles and make it pitch black to finally be able to do damage on this encounter.
Or even better yet, you snuff out the flame on the candles. The room goes dark, and you see light coming from a crack in the wall. Then you got another passageway.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Things like that as well. You know, where because they've already talked about basically having maybe in the future zones that we wander up in day out for months on end. And we think, you know, this is the whole entire zone. But now they bring out an expansion, or they do a hot fix or a game update or whatever. One of their patches comes out, and now they've taken a cave that was a cave originally, and now added a crack to it. You could do that with the same situation with, you know, using the environment, where it's really light in here. There's lights everywhere. You can, you know, you get a perception saying wind is, you know, there's a cool breeze coming from this room. You don't see anything. You turn the light on, you know, you put those flames out, and now you see, like you said, Lex, that crack there. That's where that breeze is coming from. It reveals now maybe a secret passage or a secret room, or, you know, whatever. So that would definitely be cool to see. And, you know, they've talked about, you know, seeing, you know, visually seeing different areas. I think it was in Halner's Cave. You could see cracks, and underneath was a room, and, you know, figure out how to get there. Or, you know, you see this blocked off pathway with boulders everywhere, but you can see through it, and all of a sudden, you know, there's a room there or whatnot. These are really cool starts to how to utilize the environment and add little trinkets to it as well. Not just, you know, from the combat aspect, but also from, you know, using your noggin a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I loved about, you know, when EverQuest started to add, you know, EverQuest 2 started to add in puzzles and traps and all this stuff to their dungeons. That was really fun. I remember the first time going into Unrest in EverQuest 2, having to, you know, find the chess piece and this and, you know, put the chess piece there and play the piano a certain way. I found that really engaging. And, you know, there's already, we know there's going to be stuff like this in game. We know there's going to be nighttime, there's going to be encounters that come out at night and have a certain way they act. There's going to be encounters that change during the night or the day as well. So we know that these are going to be there, but adding the environmental aspect to this and taking a look at your environment as a whole, like, you know, you see rocks or, for instance, a building. Why can't I hide behind a wooden building or a stone building? Why do I have to be visible to an encounter? You know, also take the line of sight, the vision of an encounter as well into aspect. If I'm on higher ground and it's underneath, it might not necessarily see me as I sneak past.
Yeah.
In most games, you're on higher ground, but the line of sight, it's got you. As soon as it reaches that mark, it's got you in its sights.
Now, I've got a question for you guys here. Something just kind of randomly popped in my head. Say you were in Amber Fate, you know, the gigantic ice area, you know. Say you're on one of the ledges and you're fighting. Your wizard's using a fire spell. What if, you know, they use an AE and it actually starts to melt some of the snow that's on one of the walls, making it climbable?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
That's pretty cool. You know, I do
or
like
maybe it's even a tunnel to an area or something. I mean,
what about having a reverse effect as well, though? You're on this ledge, this icy ledge, and he starts firing off an AE in that area you are, and now it starts melting away that ledge, and you fall down.
Yeah.
You know, could you have to actually use the situation? You know, think about the situation you're currently in. You know, you're in an ice cave. You're using heat. So what would technically happen? It's going to have an effect on the ice. It's going to melt it. Maybe it might reveal something. It could also be unbeneficial to you because now you just melted a big massive hole, or you've melted the ledge away. Now we can't climb up it for a period of time. Maybe now there's a time lock there because it now has to basically, you know, respawn that ice. We know there's not going to, you know, it's not a voxel-based game, so it's not going to regenerate over time. But you could have a time sink to it where now you can't get any further. So that also goes to, what about spells that you're using? If you're in a ice cave and you start using spells that are of the ice elemental portion of magic or whatever, or cold spells, it should have less effect on the encounter as well. Because technically it's an ice being, or, you know, if you're fighting a fire being, it's of fire. Casting that fireball and nuking away, it's gonna have little effect on it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different stances on that particular topic. I'm not gonna get into it right now because I've seen arguments on both sides that do make some decent points. One thing that I don't know, I'll be interested to see, especially in YouTube chat, to see what people think of this. If, say, there was a lava river, if you pull a creature and he's standing in that lava, but you're not, should he be taking damage? Even if, say, it's someone who is accustomed to a warm area, should they still take damage? Is that technically kind of cheating because you're not doing the damage? Or should that environmental element have a chance to damage you?
What about, you know, going one further and having, like, you know, this is another situation with the environment, utilizing that. Maybe that lava pit where that elemental runs into, obviously he shouldn't be affected by it, technically. You know,
right. If it was a fire-based elemental, yeah, or say like a lava golem,
exactly,
it would make sense not to technically take damage.
Let's say, for instance, you do have that kind of situation. What if you could now freeze that up?
Mm-hmm.
You know, use the environment that way. So you interact with your spells not just on the encounters, the engagement itself. You actually interact your spells with the environment itself. Maybe there's certain portions in a dungeon or in a zone or whatever where you might have to cast. You know, we've seen this in multiple games. They have this kind of, you know, dynamic in there where you have to use a certain spell on a wall so you can climb up it. Or to unlock, you know, to unlock the magic barrier on there, you have to cast something on it to kind of unlock that. We've seen that. So, but we see less of it, and we should be seeing more of that. You know, where not everything is just based on the combat with the NPCs and the players themselves. Have the environment take an impact as well, and offer unique outcomes that could possibly happen. Like, you know, we know there's exploding chests that you can use to, you know, blow up walls, but why can't those technically be something that is there in general? So if you cast, you know, if you cast an AE and there's you know, gunpowder chests around you, those things should explode and damage you as well. You know, utilize the utilities in the zones as well. Have a look at some of the utilities that you have. Maybe you have some wooden crates that have got, you know, dynamite in there, and, you know, if we're standing next to them and our wizard decides to nuke the hell out of this area because, you know, danger close, guess what? He's just killed us because the dynamite just exploded.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure anyone that's played an ARPG, you've died once or twice to an exploding barrel while you're AE'd, because I know I have.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, you know, these are, again, just, you know,
just ideas,
wild speculation ideas, what ifs.
Yep.
You know, there's definitely
no link to what's in the game.
Exactly, no link to it. It's not something that is.
I've got more food in this bowl than information on Pantheon right now that is out there. And yes, there is actually some crumbs in here, so technically true.
You know, the reason for these discussions is to basically help
engage the community, keep everybody thinking.
Engage the community, exactly, Lex. You know, help you know, developers look at things that they might not have thought about.
Right.
You know, for you know, maybe future endeavors, maybe for expansions, maybe for adding in something revolutionary and new.
I don't think we ever, at one point, have ever said that Pantheon should have a mechanic or an idea that we've thought of. We've said that it would be nice, but that's mostly an opinion.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyway, I think we've kind of covered all we can cover on this topic. We thank you all for coming out today. Next Friday we'll have a change of pace, and we'll be sitting down with Kid Rich to talk about Pantheon, get some insight from him, what his thoughts are on some of the mechanics of Pantheon, you know, the typical player Q&A, and also to chat about his experience on you know, with Pantheon. And yeah, we're looking forward to sitting down with him. And do you have anything to add? Final notes, final words, guys?
No.
Nothing that wouldn't be incredibly salty, because it's just a day I've had.
Yeah, it's not been a peculiar productive day. Shai, are there any thoughts, questions, ideas, counter actions?
Well, the only one that you guys didn't cover was well, you kind of did a little bit, but I'll mention it anyway, from Exmoco, mentioning about heat vision, with maybe seeing vital signs for greater hits on percent of life, or maybe sensing a threat.
Is that doable in a targeting game?
Let's see. So heat vision that shows vital signs so that you could increase your damage, if I'm understanding this correct?
I don't know. That's just what the comment was. Vitals, heat vision, vital signs for greater hits on percent life or can sense threat.
I'm sorry, Moko. I don't think I'm completely understanding that.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what you mean by that.
But it has made me think that if you were fighting, say, a fire elemental, as you're fighting it and it's getting weaker, if you had heat vision on, I would assume it would get darker.
He was just blabbing.
That
was it.
I mean, if you could see, I don't think it should ever go so far as to like, look, veins and a heart, but because that'd be a bit much for for something like Pantheon. But in terms of, say, like a fire elemental that is a magical being, as it gets weaker, it would kind of make sense that it would have a harder time keeping itself together. So you would start to see it cool down. So if you were using a heat vision, it would get darker, I would assume.
Yeah. Cool. So I presume by Josh's silence, he has nothing further to add here.
So my silence is golden.
So
I think Josh is going to sleep.
Josh doesn't need to say anything. He just needs to be visible, and he wins.
Yeah. Well, we'll carry on with that on Friday. Host with the most.
I'm going to win. Don't kid yourself.
Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you next Friday when we sit down with Kid Rich and have a look at Pantheon. Sit down with him. We're looking forward to sitting down and having a chat. So, take care.
Have a great weekend, guys.